Let's take a moment to consider our natural tendency to react when someone says something hurtful. It's an instinct and impulse, something that rises up almost involuntarily. When someone's words or actions strike us in a painful way, it feels almost necessary to react, as though by reacting we are protecting ourselves or proving something. But let's look closer. Where does that reaction come from? More often than not, it's rooted in our defensiveness, a desire to defend our own sense of self, our ego. You see, the ego is sensitive, fragile in its need to feel affirmed and unchallenged. So when someone says something that seems to threaten us or our sense of worth, the ego triggers a reaction as if to say, "No, I will not let you hurt me." This defensiveness feels automatic, like it's a part of who we are. But is it really? Or is it simply a conditioned pattern of response that has been taught to us over years, based on a misunderstanding of what truly protects us? Let's try to imagine for a moment if instead of reacting, we paused. Let's say someone says something hurtful, and instead of letting that statement take hold of us and define us in that moment, we step back internally. Picture this pause, as if you were watching an ocean wave. When a wave crashes, it churns up sand and sediment, clouding the water, making it difficult to see clearly. But after just a few moments, the water settles. It becomes clear and still. When we react instantly, we are like that turbulent water, unable to see clearly, our emotions clouded by the urge to defend and retaliate. Yet when we give ourselves a moment, we allow that sediment to settle. We give clarity the space to emerge. What does this clarity reveal? It reveals that our initial reaction was likely not about the other person at all. It was about something within us, perhaps an insecurity or a hidden fear. It could be a fear of not being valued, a fear of being misunderstood, or even a fear of rejection. When we pause, we begin to see that our reaction isn't truly a response to the other person's words, but rather to our own inner landscape, our own beliefs about ourselves. Now, think about how freeing it would be if we didn't have to react immediately. How freeing it would be to observe our feelings without allowing them to dictate our actions. This shift from reacting to observing opens up a whole new way of engaging with the world. We're no longer at the mercy of others' words or judgments. We're no longer bound to the emotional turbulence that reactions bring. Instead, we found a way to stay centered, to remain in control of our peace. Let me share an example. Imagine a time when someone criticized you. Maybe a friend, a family member, or a coworker. If you think back to your immediate reaction, it was probably fast and strong, right? There might have been anger, maybe hurt, or a rush of defensive thoughts. But imagine if instead of reacting, you simply noticed that reaction rising and let it be. Imagine saying to yourself, here comes that hurt. Here's that feeling of anger. You're not denying it or trying to suppress it. You're just acknowledging it without acting on it. And as you observe it, it loses some of its power over you. By practicing this kind of mindful observation, you realize that the hurtful comment isn't the problem, it's our reaction to it. The emotion is there, but we are choosing not to let it control us. This allows us to handle the moment with wisdom and grace, rather than with impulsive, defensive energy. Alan Watts often spoke about the nature of the ego and how it's quick to defend itself because it sees itself as separate from others, separate from the flow of life. But what if instead we understood that this moment of pain or hurt is just one small part of a much larger picture? In the larger context of our lives, one single moment, one single hurtful comment becomes less significant. It's just a passing cloud in an otherwise vast sky. Our true essence, our true self is that sky. It's untouched by any passing clouds of criticism, insult, or hurt. So next time you feel hurt or attacked, remember you don't have to react. You don't have to be the turbulent water. You can be the observer. In this choice to observe rather than react, there is profound power. You're no longer giving your peace away to someone else's words or actions. Instead, you're reclaiming your own emotional freedom. And it's in this space of freedom that we find our true strength, not in reactions or defenses, but in our ability to let go and stay rooted in our own center, undisturbed. So as you move forward, I invite you to practice this pause, to observe before reacting, and to feel the liberation that comes from choosing peace over defensiveness. Let's talk about the power of pause. Imagine the next time someone says something that hurts or disappoints you. Rather than reacting, you simply stop. You pause, allowing a few seconds of quiet between the moment of pain and the urge to respond. This may sound simple, but it's profoundly powerful. In those few moments, you allow yourself to breathe, to experience what's happening inside you without being swept up in it. This pause is an invitation to observe, to really see the emotion without immediately identifying with it. By doing so, you start to shift the way you interact with your emotions and ultimately with the people around you. I think of it like watching a storm through a window. When a storm rages outside, the winds howl, the rain pours down, and the sky is dark. But because you're inside, looking through the window, you're safe, separate from the chaos. Similarly, when someone's words or actions stir up hurtful emotions, that moment of pause is like stepping back and viewing the storm from the safety of your inner self, where you can simply observe. You don't have to get swept up in the winds of anger or the downpour of pain. You are able to watch and let it unfold without being drawn into it. Now, when we take that pause, we open a door to a different choice. We're no longer acting on autopilot. We're not controlled by the impulses that often lead us to say or do things we regret later. In this moment of pause, we can begin to see our reactions for what they are: reflexes, habits, not the true essence of who we are. The more we practice this, the more we realize that our immediate reactions are often temporary and don't define us. There's something deeply liberating about discovering that you don't have to react. You have a choice. Imagine that someone says something rude or dismissive, something that really hits you. Instead of reacting, you let yourself pause, breathing into that feeling. You're still aware of the sting, of course, but you don't need to respond to it. In that pause, you have space, freedom to respond in a way that aligns with who you truly are, rather than how the moment might tempt you to react. There's a famous analogy about a glass of muddy water. If you stir a glass of water with dirt at the bottom, it becomes cloudy and murky. But if you let the glass sit, the dirt settles to the bottom, and the water becomes clear again. Our minds work much the same way. When something hurts us, it stirs up our emotions, clouding our judgment, our ability to think clearly. But if we pause, if we allow ourselves to simply be with the feeling without reacting, we find that with time our emotions settle, and we're able to see clearly again. In this clarity, we begin to ask ourselves deeper questions. Why did that comment hurt so much? Why did I feel so angry? And often the answers surprise us. We discover that the pain wasn't truly about the other person or what they said, but about something within us that is unresolved, something that perhaps needs healing or understanding. In this way, hurtful interactions become mirrors, showing us parts of ourselves we might not otherwise see. Let's consider a relatable example. Imagine you're in a meeting and a colleague undermines your idea. You feel a surge of anger and maybe some embarrassment. But instead of reacting, you take a moment to pause. You breathe, you let the initial emotion rise and fall without acting on it. Now, in that space, you begin to realize that part of your reaction came from a deeper feeling, maybe an old insecurity, a fear of not being respected or valued. In this pause, you gain the insight to understand that your reaction wasn't just about the moment, it was tied to something deeper, something you can now start to work on. By practicing this pause, you build resilience. You become less and less affected by other people's words or actions because you're no longer reacting on impulse. Instead, you're choosing how to respond. This choice is empowering because it gives you control over your emotional landscape. You're no longer a victim of every hurtful word or action. You're a conscious observer, free to choose peace over conflict, understanding over reaction. The more you integrate this practice of pausing into your life, the more you'll notice the space it creates within you. It's like discovering an inner sanctuary, a place of calm and clarity that you can return to any time you feel shaken. And from this sanctuary, you find yourself responding to situations in a way that aligns with your higher self, with the person you truly want to be. So as you go about your day, remember this simple, powerful tool. When something triggers you, just pause. Allow yourself those few moments of quiet observation and see what unfolds. This practice of pausing isn't about suppressing or ignoring your feelings. It's about giving them room to breathe, allowing them to rise and fall without letting them control you. In this way, you remain centered, grounded, and free. And in that freedom lies true strength, true resilience. Consider the idea that emotions are temporary, like waves on the surface of the ocean, rising and falling, ebbing and flowing. When someone says something hurtful or does something that stings, the initial reaction is intense, almost overwhelming. You might feel anger, sadness, or frustration rising up, as though that emotion is taking over completely. But here's the thing, just like waves, those feelings, no matter how powerful or fleeting, they surge and then they fade. If we learn to ride them out, they pass naturally, like a wave returning to the sea. In moments of hurt, it's easy to get caught up in that first intense feeling, to believe that the anger or pain is everything, that it defines our whole experience. But if we can recognize the temporary nature of emotions, we start to see them differently. We understand that even though a feeling is strong, it doesn't have to control us. We don't have to become the emotion instead. We can let it be there, knowing that it will soon change. Imagine a child building a sandcastle on the shore. They pour so much effort and attention into each detail, carefully forming the walls and the towers. But when the tide comes in, those waves wash over the sandcastle and carry it back into the ocean. The child doesn't cry or fight the waves. They understand that this is the nature of sandcastles. They come and go, just like the waves themselves. In the same way, our emotions are like those waves, like those sandcastles. They come, they build up, and then they dissolve. Now, this isn't to say that emotions aren't important. Emotions are deeply valuable. They're signals from within, showing us what we care about, what matters to us. When someone's words or actions hurt us, that emotion we feel is real. It's valid. But that doesn't mean it has to control us. By recognizing the temporary nature of emotions, we give ourselves permission to experience them fully without getting stuck in them. Let's consider a scenario where someone criticizes you harshly, maybe a friend or a coworker. In that moment, you feel hurt, maybe even humiliated. The initial sting of those words is like a wave crashing over you. But instead of reacting, instead of letting that wave pull you under, imagine just observing it. You feel the pain, you acknowledge it, but you also remind yourself this is temporary. This is a wave. It will pass. You allow yourself to experience the emotion without needing to act on it or be defined by it. This kind of awareness, the understanding that emotions are temporary, allows us to respond with greater wisdom. When we know that the feeling won't last forever, we don't feel as pressure to act on it immediately. We don't need to defend ourselves or fight back right away. We can wait, breathe, let the wave of emotion settle. And as it does, we find ourselves in a place of greater clarity, where we can see the situation more objectively. There's another powerful analogy that fits here. Think of emotions like weather patterns. When a storm rolls in, it can be intense, with dark clouds and heavy rain. But no storm lasts forever. The clouds eventually part, and the sky clears again. Emotions work the same way. No matter how intense they feel, they will always pass. And the more we practice this awareness, the less power those intense moments have over us. We learn that, like weather, emotions are always in motion, always changing. Imagine how different our lives could be if in every moment of hurt or anger, we could step back and say, this is just a passing storm. When we approach our emotions this way, we find a profound sense of peace. We're no longer at the mercy of every storm or wave that comes our way. Instead, we become like a mountain rooted deep into the earth, steady and grounded no matter what weather surrounds it. The mountain remains still, unshaken by the storm. And in the same way, we can remain calm and centered, even when emotions swirl around us. This doesn't mean that emotions are meaningless or that we should ignore them. Quite the opposite. Emotions give us insight into our inner selves. They point us toward areas of growth, places where we might need healing or understanding. But when we recognize their temporary nature, we can interact with them in a healthier, more balanced way. We can acknowledge them without letting them take over our entire sense of self. Consider a time when you felt extremely hurt by someone's words. Maybe it was something that seemed to cut to the core, and the hurt felt all-consuming. But if you look back now, you might notice that the intensity of that pain has faded over time. The wave passed. The storm cleared. What once seemed unbearable has become a memory, something you can observe with greater detachment. This awareness that even the deepest pain eventually softens gives us a kind of emotional resilience. We learn to trust that we can weather any storm because we know it's temporary. And as we learn to see emotions this way, as waves that rise and fall, we begin to notice that we're not just the waves. We're waves, we're the ocean itself. The ocean contains every wave, but isn't defined by any single one. In the same way, we contain every emotion, but are so much more than any passing feeling. This perspective allows us to remain open, to experience life fully without being overwhelmed by each emotional wave that comes our way. So the next time you feel hurt, remember this: let the wave come, let it rise, but also let it fall. Trust that it will pass, just like every wave before it. In this way, we find freedom from the cycle of reaction. We become steady, grounded, able to experience the full range of human emotions without being ruled by them. And in that freedom, we discover our true strength, the deep, unshakable peace that lies beneath every passing wave. Imagine that when someone's words or actions hurt you, it's not just a reflection of who they are or what they believe about you. Often it says more about the world they're experiencing, the struggles they're dealing with, or even the fears they're carrying. When we realize that hurtful words or actions are rarely about us alone, we gain a new sense of understanding and freedom. This perspective invites us to see that each person carries their own inner battles, and sometimes their behavior toward us is more about those battles than it is about us. Imagine someone you know, a friend, family member, or colleague who tends to be harsh or dismissive. If you look deeper, you might find that beneath their criticism is a person who feels insecure or has faced their own struggles. Often they may project that pain outward as a defense mechanism. It's as if they build walls of harshness to protect the vulnerable parts of themselves. Recognizing this doesn't excuse their actions, but it does give us insight into why they may act the way they do. Rather than seeing their behavior as an attack, we start to understand that it's likely a reflection of their own inner challenges. Take, for example, a situation where a friend snaps at you unexpectedly. The immediate reaction might be to feel hurt or offended, wondering why they would lash out, when you've done nothing to provoke it. But if you take a step back, you might see a friend who's dealing with stress or facing their own insecurities, and whose words have more to do with what's happening inside them than with you. This awareness can be profoundly liberating. It allows us to take things less personally, to be less affected by someone else's temporary behavior, because we see it for what it is: a reflection of their state of mind, not a statement about our worth. When we can see someone's hurtful behavior as a mirror of their internal world, it brings a softness to our response. Instead of reacting with anger or hurt, we might respond with empathy or even curiosity. What would it feel like, instead of snapping back, to ask yourself, I wonder what they're going through right now? That shift in perspective doesn't necessarily mean you'll tolerate unacceptable behavior, but it does mean you'll be less likely to let it hurt you in the same way. It changes the emotional weight you carry from the interaction. Imagine life as a stage where each of us is acting out our stories, shaped by our experiences, beliefs, and inner conflicts. When someone behaves unkindly, it's as if they're acting out a scene from a script written by past hurts, insecurities, or fears. By not reacting, by not taking their words to heart, you're choosing not to be an extra in their script. Instead, you become the observer watching the play unfold without becoming entangled in it. This kind of detachment allows you to maintain your own peace, your own center, regardless of what others are projecting outwardly. Think of a time when someone said something hurtful to you. Maybe it was a comment about your appearance, your work, or even your values. In that moment, it might have felt like a personal attack, something aimed at the core of who you are. But consider this: was that comment really about you? Or could it have been about something they were going through, something that made them feel the need to criticize or belittle? Often people project their own pain onto others because it's easier than confronting it within themselves. Recognizing this allows us to approach those moments with greater compassion for them and for ourselves. This kind of understanding doesn't mean that we have to accept poor treatment. Boundaries are essential, and it's okay to distance ourselves from people who consistently project their negativity onto us. But when we view others' hurtful actions through the lens of compassion, it becomes easier to set those boundaries without anger or resentment. We can protect our peace without carrying the weight of someone else's struggles. This perspective helps us realize that we're not responsible for fixing their pain, nor do we need to absorb it. Consider the analogy of a mirror. When someone throws negativity your way, you don't have to absorb it. Like a sponge, you can reflect it back, like a mirror. This reflection doesn't mean responding with the same negativity. It means not letting their emotions stick to you. You allow their words and actions to pass without taking them on as part of your own experience. You see their actions as reflections of their inner world, and in doing so, you maintain your own peace and clarity. Each of us is on our own journey, shaped by different challenges and experiences. When someone lashes out, it's often a sign that they're struggling with something we may not fully understand. By choosing not to react, by maintaining a sense of calm, we create space for ourselves to remain grounded and compassionate. We let their words or actions pass through us without leaving a lasting mark. This is a profound way to live, one that allows us to interact with the world without being defined by the pain or negativity of others. So the next time you encounter hurtful behavior, try to take a step back and see it as a reflection not of you, but of the world the person is living in. You'll find that with this perspective, you're able to move through life with a greater sense of ease, understanding, and resilience. And in this way, you remain centered in who you are, unaffected by the waves of others' emotions. I think of those times when you felt an intense urge to respond immediately, to act in the heat of the moment. We've all been there, where we feel so compelled to defend ourselves, to make our perspective heard, or to simply react to the way someone has treated us. But what if, instead of responding instantly, we allow ourselves a moment of stillness, a moment of quiet before taking action? Imagine holding a stone in your hand, standing by the edge of a calm lake. In that quiet moment, you toss the stone into the water. The ripples spread, expanding in circles, reaching farther and farther, touching parts of the lake that the stone never came near. This is what happens when we react impulsively. Our words, our actions, they don't just affect the immediate situation. They spread, sometimes impacting people or places we didn't intend to. And often, once those ripples are set in motion, there's no stopping them. But here's something powerful to consider. What if you don't throw the stone? What if you hold on to it a little longer, thinking about the consequences, about what effect those ripples will have on others and yourself? When we pause, we're not avoiding or denying our emotions. We're choosing to understand them more deeply, allowing ourselves the clarity to decide what kind of impact we want to leave. This kind of pause doesn't need to be dramatic sometimes. It's as simple as taking a deep breath, closing our eyes, and allowing the initial intensity of the emotion to settle. It's incredible what a difference that small action can make. That one breath, that single heartbeat of stillness, can create space for a better perspective to emerge. In that quiet, we can ask ourselves, is this the action I truly want to take? And often we find that by holding back for just a moment, we see the situation more clearly and can choose a response that aligns with who we are, rather than letting a temporary feeling dictate our actions. Consider this analogy. Reacting is like tasting a dish that's only half cooked. You don't get the true flavor the ingredients haven't had time to blend, to simmer and develop into something whole. In the same way, if we react immediately to hurt, anger, or frustration, we're responding with only half of the picture, guided by raw, unprocessed emotion. But if we allow our emotions to sit, to simmer, we gain a deeper, more complete understanding of what's really happening inside us. We move beyond the initial flare of anger or pain and start to see what lies underneath. And often what we find is something more insightful, more grounded than we could have discovered in the heat of the moment. Imagine someone you care about saying something hurtful to you, words that sting and seem to cut at your core. The impulse might be to react, to defend yourself, to match their intensity. But instead, try sitting with that feeling. Don't push it away, but don't act on it either. Let it rest inside of you. See what it has to teach you. As you hold back, as you let the wave of that feeling settle, you may start to see the situation differently. You might recognize that their words were spoken in a moment of their own hurt or confusion. And your initial impulse to respond with anger might transform into a desire to understand, to bridge the gap rather than widen it. In this stillness, you're creating a space where understanding and wisdom can flourish. You're allowing yourself the chance to respond thoughtfully rather than reacting reflexively. And what you find in that space is often a sense of peace, a clarity that helps you see the bigger picture. In that place of calm, you might even realize that no response is needed at all, that you can let their words drift by without becoming entangled in them, like clouds passing across a clear sky. This pause, this moment of intentional stillness, is a gift we give ourselves. It's a way of respecting our own emotions, acknowledging that they are real and valid, but also recognizing that they are not the entirety of who we are. We don't have to be defined by a single moment of anger or pain. Instead, we can hold space for that feeling, allow it to exist without allowing it to control us. In this way, we create a balance within ourselves, a strength that doesn't come from reacting quickly, but from choosing our actions thoughtfully and with purpose. Letting that initial wave of emotion settle also allows us to consider the long-term consequences of our actions. In the heat of the moment, it's easy to forget that words, once spoken, can't be taken back. Actions, once taken, have effects that reach far beyond the present. But when we give ourselves that pause, we gain the wisdom to see beyond the immediate, to understand that our response has the power to either heal or harm, to create understanding or to deepen divides. So the next time you feel that surge of emotion, when the urge to react is almost overpowering, remember that there is strength in waiting, in choosing stillness over impulsiveness. Each moment of stillness we practice strengthens our ability to respond with intention rather than reaction. And in that way, we not only protect our own peace, but we also create a ripple effect of calm and understanding in our interactions with others. Ultimately, this practice of holding back, of allowing space for our emotions to settle, isn't about suppressing our feelings. It's about honoring them by giving them the time they need to reveal their deeper truths. And in doing so, we give ourselves the gift of clarity, of insight, and of a response that reflects our true self. Imagine for a moment that every experience we have, even the difficult or painful ones, is like a pebble placed on the path before us, each one shaping our journey and teaching us something valuable. When someone's actions or words hurt us, it's as if they've tossed a pebble onto our path, disrupting the smooth ground we'd prefer to walk. But rather than stumbling on that pebble, we have a choice. We can let it be something we learn from, something that deepens our understanding of the world, of others, and of ourselves. This choice not only helps us, but transforms how we engage with each new step we take in life. You see, if we respond with anger or hold on to the hurt, we end up collecting those pebbles. We carry them with us, and they start to weigh us down. Imagine the exhaustion of lugging around every bit of pain, every grudge, and every bitter feeling from each time someone has wronged us. This weight doesn't just slow us down, it becomes a barrier between ourselves and the openness, the lightness we need to experience life fully. But when we let go, when we choose to leave the pebble behind instead of pocketing it, we're freeing ourselves to keep moving forward unburdened and at peace. Think of the people in your life who have wronged you in some way. There may have been times when their actions felt like a strike against you, perhaps challenging your dignity or shaking your sense of self-worth. When we react to these moments by clinging to the hurt, we're actually keeping ourselves tethered to the memory of that event. We allow it to follow us, casting a shadow over future interactions and creating a barrier to trust and connection. But when we choose not to hold on to it, when we decide that we don't need to carry that particular pebble anymore, we release ourselves from its influence. We allow our future to be shaped not by what has happened to us, but by the choices we're making in this present moment. It can help to look at every experience as a mirror. When someone hurts us, it's often a reflection of something they're struggling with inside themselves. Their actions may mirror their own fears, insecurities, or unresolved pain. Instead of letting that reflection define us, we can step back and observe it with compassion, recognizing that their actions are less about us and more about them. This perspective doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it does free us from taking it personally. It gives us the clarity to see that their behavior isn't a reflection of our worth, but rather a glimpse into their internal battles. In the natural world, trees grow roots deep into the soil to find nourishment and stability, drawing on the strength of the earth even as they face storms, droughts, or high winds. Likewise, when we cultivate an inner resilience, rooted in our values and our sense of self-worth, we can weather the storms caused by others' actions. We become like that tree, able to bend and sway with life's challenges without breaking or losing our sense of peace. Instead of reacting impulsively or letting ourselves be uprooted by another's hurtful actions, we remain grounded, nourished by our own strength and understanding. It's not always easy to let go of pain or disappointment. Sometimes our feelings are so intense that they feel impossible to simply set aside. But this practice isn't about denying our emotions. It's about allowing ourselves to feel them fully, acknowledging them as valid responses to real experiences, and then choosing to let them pass through us rather than settle within us. By doing so, we honor our emotions without letting them control us. We allow them to teach us what they need to, and then we release them, letting ourselves move forward with greater freedom and clarity. Consider how liberating it feels to not carry resentment toward anyone. Imagine moving through each day without the weight of past hurts affecting your mood or your perception of others. This sense of lightness, of inner peace, is within reach for all of us. When we choose not to react, when we allow ourselves to process and then release the hurt, we create space within ourselves for joy, compassion, and understanding. This space is vital. It's what allows us to connect with others openly and to experience life's moments fully, without the filter of past pain clouding our vision. When we let go, we're choosing to trust ourselves, to trust that we are strong enough, wise enough, and resilient enough to navigate life without holding on to every difficult experience. This trust is empowering. It allows us to be present in our interactions, to give others the benefit of the doubt, and to approach each new situation with a fresh perspective. We're no longer acting from a place of defense or suspicion. We're engaging with life openly, confident in our ability to handle whatever comes our way. So the next time someone's actions feel like a pebble disrupting your path, take a moment to decide, do you want to carry the pebble with you, letting it weigh you down and distract you from the journey ahead? Or would you rather leave it where it is, acknowledging its presence, but choosing not to let it define your steps? By choosing to let it go, you're giving yourself the gift of a lighter, more peaceful walk through life, free from the unnecessary weight of past hurts. And in doing so, you become an example for others, showing them the strength that comes not from reacting, but from embracing a path of peace and resilience.